On a recent Friday night in our home, Shalev picked up a copy of the U.S. Constitution off the shelf and started reading it. This particular edition was a pocket version published by the ACLU as part of a Know Your Rights campaign. They sent it to me in the mail because I'm a donor. And I was so excited that he pulled it off the shelf, I asked him to read it out loud. I was almost as excited as the day he received his chumash from Golda Ak Academy. Tell me the weekly Parsha, Shalev. What do you think it says to us? What do you think it means? Remind me about section 1 of Article 3, please. Because these texts are foundational to the key components of my identity. We are American Jews, or Jewish Americans, the difference of which comes first is somewhat inconsequential to me because they're both so essential to who I am. If you take away one, you destroy a part of me. Article 1, Article 2, Article 3, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, the Bill of Rights. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or of the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. Aseret hadibrot, I am the Lord your God who took you out of the land of Egypt. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall make no graven image. You shall not take my name in vain. Without the law, we are no different from any other nation on earth. Other nations are more numerous. Others have more natural resources. Other nations have better climates. Others can produce cars just as we do. But we have these laws. There's an important essay I read in rabbinical school. It's by Robert Cover. It's from 1983, the year I was born. It's called Nomos and Narrative. Nomos means law, but it's more than that. It means ritual, norms, values, and beliefs, a comprehensive framework for governing a people's life. Narrative is how we construct meaning as a society. It's comprised of the stories and interpretations that make the law resonate with a people's sense of morality and justice. And the combination of nomos and narrative, my rabbinical school teachers wanted me to understand, is the same as what we experience as Jews as the literary genre known as Torah. It's an interweaving of stories that often have moralistic lessons with legal texts and codes. Nomos and narrative go hand in hand to define our identity and the covenants that we share with one another and with God. So Article 1, yes, but also George Washington and the cherry tree. I cannot tell a lie. Together, they form an American ethos about who we are, or at least who we're striving to be. What qualities do we seek in leadership, and what constraints do we place on legitimate use of power? We revere Washington for his courage and strength, for his bravery, but also for his restraint, his humility, and we look for those qualities in our leaders today. We look for honesty, because, as Hannah Arendt said in an interview in the New York Review of Books in October of 1978, if everybody lies to you, the consequence is not that you begin to believe the lies, but rather that nobody believes anything any longer. And a people that no longer can believe anything cannot make up its mind. It is deprived not only of its capacity to act, but also of its capacity to think and to judge, and with such a people, you can do then whatever you please. Lincoln surrounded himself with a team of rivals, and we learn from that it's important to have a robust discussion across different opinions that will inform your policy. Nomos and narrative are part of who we are. Narrative. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth and everything in it. In 6 days, God created the trees and the fish and the rivers and the sun and man and woman. In the image of God, he created them. God created the earth and the sky and everything in between. But on the seventh day, God rested. It's a good story. Nomos. You shall do no work on the seventh day. You shall observe a day of rest, just like God did. No creative work shall be done. Narrative, we were slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt, and the Egyptians dealt harshly with us and oppressed us. Therefore, you shall bow down to no other God but me, says God, Nomos. And you shall not oppress the stranger, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt. You know the heart of the stranger, the immigrant, the refugee. That's Nomos. Haman tried to kill us. Narrative. Spoiler alert, he didn't succeed. Therefore, we eat triangle cookies and give gifts to our friends and gifts to the poor, and we read a Megillah, Nomos. But more, we remember always that there are people with genocidal intentions, and we should use every political resource at our disposal to prevent their plans from coming to fruition. Why do we dwell in Sukkot in the month of Tishrei, Nomos? Because we remember what it was like to be homeless and wander. Narrative. Because there was a time when our people was utterly dependent on God's grace to survive in the wilderness. I think you get the point. These stories and these laws together define who we are. I think my job as a rabbi is to remind us of these stories and these laws and to ask some questions. Have we forgotten who we are? Are we what we are meant to be? To state it positively, what are the values that we hold dear, that we learn from these stories and these laws? I am the rabbi of this shul. You have engaged me to be your leader. I take this privilege and trust very seriously. You've asked me to teach you on Shabbat and holidays, but also to set a tone for who we are as a congregation. You expect me to define the parameters of Jewish law that bind our ritual and communal practice. You've given me a lofty title for this role. It's in my contract if you care to look. I am the Mara Da'atra of this place. It's an Aramaic phrase meaning the master of this place. Impressive, right? Talia is happy to remind me that while I may be the Mara Da'atra of the shul, that does not necessarily make me the Mara Da'atra of our home. But before I get too high and mighty, before I think for a moment that I have any authority over any of you, I always remember that we all answer to a higher authority. It's not hard to remember. After all, you're pretty good at letting me know the limits of my power. If I, as your rabbi, want to spend money on a program or divert funds from one program to another, you better believe I'm going to hear about it from the president of the synagogue or the treasurer or the board of trustees. All this for a measly $10,000 program? Why bother? Let me do what I want. After all, I'm the leader. But we do bother. And I don't do whatever I want. Because, as our rabbis say, HaTorah chasa al mamonam shel Yisrael, the Torah is concerned with the financial resources of the Jewish people. Because it's not my money, it's your money. And it's not my shul, it's our shul. Even in matters of Jewish law, of halakha, where a rabbi of a congregation is granted both by custom and by contract a great deal of leeway. If I decide to skip Anim Zmirot today, or if I decide to add Anim Zmirot today, I know that I'm going to hear from you. Because authorities granted on a piece of paper that we signed years ago are balanced constantly by the consent of the governed. So in this shul where we practice communal living and we learn tolerance for people who are different from us, where we have a parliamentarian and an annual meeting and committees and rules governing our behavior, we also have agadah. We also have stories and legends, narratives about who we are and what we aspire to be. Rabbi Silverstein used to go door to door offering help to Jewish families to hang mezuzot. We learn about the importance of welcoming and keruv. We learn about the head and the heart and the hand Jews. We tell the story of Nat of blessed memory, how he'd interrupt the rabbi, and we learn a culture of partnership between lay people and clergy. In the grand narrative of the Exodus from Egypt, the narrative that defines this book that we're in, and perhaps the narrative that defines all of Judaism itself, central to that narrative is a parsha about covenant. This is the parsha of the law, a parsha of our first encounter as a nation with God, our ultimate authority and allegiance. In this week's parsha, we receive the law, and we declare in unison, Na'aseh v'nishma, we will do, we will obey, or we will understand, or we will learn. After all, just because we have laws doesn't mean we can't debate their meaning. These texts have always had myriad interpretations and layers. But even in this parsha about law, it begins with the story of a Midianite leader and father-in-law who admires the might and moral center of the Israelite people, and we tell a story of how he had some advice for his Jewish son-in-law, a new leader himself. Yitro taught Moshe how to delegate and share his power. Even though Moshe heard the voice of God directly, he had to listen to the voice of the people and share his power. These past few weeks have been very chaotic and very concerning, both here in the United States and in Israel. Both America and Israel face great challenges from the outside, but also division and corruption from within. And both seem to have leaders who mistake plurality for majority, or even they mistake majority for mandate. I'm fond of an old saying, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. I think that's what Yitro was saying to Moshe. And it's what I want to say this President's Day weekend to any leader who purports to represent me or us. If we want to go far, we will have to learn how to go forward together. I believe what we do here in this room, what we do here in this shul, in a community as blessedly diverse as ours, we have something invaluable to teach these men about leadership, community, and the values that will enable us to move forward together. After all, we in this room, I know, trust me, I know, we don't agree on most issues. But we learn how to support one another and care for each other, and especially to care for the most vulnerable in our community. When I stand before you as your rabbi, I am constantly aware that I am speaking to a mixed multitude, and so I choose my words carefully, not because I lack conviction. Let me assure you, I do not, but because I want us to continue to speak together. I want us to continue to learn from each other and move forward together. If we want to go far, we will have to learn how to do this together. But we must also be clear and unequivocal about the laws and stories that we are all accountable to. I think the only thing that has ever in our history held these men in check, the only thing that holds our world in balance, is that somewhere in Duluth, Minnesota, or Plano, Texas, or Caldwell, New Jersey, there's an Abba or an Ima who tells their child these stories and these laws and impresses upon them that they are important, that they belong to them and to all of us, that they are worth learning and understanding, that they helped your grandparents live the lives that made my life possible. And if you want a good life, you will do them and you will learn them. And one day you will teach them to your children and their children after them. I hope to be there to see it. But even if I am gone, I'll rest easy knowing these laws and these stories are in your hands. I'll conclude with a story. It's not an ancient one. It actually occurred right in this space just a few weeks ago. And it's a story I want to tell because I believe it has an important moral narrative. Right in this room, we put Moses on trial. Thanks, Debbie, for encouraging us to do that. It was a spectacular program. Without getting into the whole story, as you know, Moses killed an Egyptian who was beating an Israelite slave. And in our trial, there was a judge and there were lawyers, but most importantly, there was all of you who were the jury. And in the process, we were making an important statement about Judaism's relationship to its leaders. Trying Moshe Rabbeinu for murder? What chutzpah! What chutzpah! How dare you put Moshe on trial? After all, he was acting with righteous indignation on behalf of an important value. There was an urgent moral imperative to act. We can't judge him. Maybe I agreed with him. Maybe I cheered him on when I read about it in the Chumash. Maybe he gave those Egyptians their just deserts. Who are we to stand in judgment of such a great man as Moshe? And yet there we sat and we listened to arguments on both sides. And we determined that no man, not even the great lawgiver Moses himself, is above the law. And no man is above the will of the people, that there is accountability for action, even if such action is righteously motivated. On this President's Weekend, Parshat Yitro, let us remind ourselves and each other of these core beliefs and stories that define who we are and who we aspire to be. And let us resolve, just as our ancestors did years ago, Na'aseh v'nishma, we will act and we will learn together. Shabbat Shalom.